Hello everyone and welcome back to the fourth match of the evening in our Super Mario 64 70-star tournament. We've got Drogie versus Counterlogic Gaming's own Cheese in this match for you. I'm Electric and I'm joined now by Mini Matt. How are you feeling tonight, man?
Feeling good. Very excited to get this race started.
Yeah, it should be a pretty nice one. She's, of course, a huge player in the game. It doesn't really need to be said. We can already see the breakdown right now. She's, with this win, very easily going to be in first place for now. Blue Bob could potentially usurp that lead if he gets a better win, but if Cheese gets a really, really nice time tonight, I could definitely see him being on top of the leaderboard moving on into week 3. Now, meanwhile, Drogie we're seeing kind of towards the bottom with that loss from week 1, but he can advance himself pretty far in the standings, actually probably going to be able to get himself potentially over D whatever for a moment if he's able to pull out a win this match. So
this one would definitely feel really good. It's definitely motivating to take out someone as strong as the opponent that Drogie has right now.
Right, and it's not impossible. We've seen it before. Last season, Benji beating Cheese in both of their matchups, knocking him out of finals contention. So it'll be really interesting to see how Cheese approaches this match, especially with his dominant focus on 120 star recently.
Yeah, the routes, that's one of the things that's so exciting about Mario 64 speedrunning. All of the different routes and all the different runs are so interesting in how they're... You have to know completely different tech almost. Like, there's a lot of stuff you have to do in 0 star and 16 star that you barely have to touch in 70.
Right, like when you're trying to do Bowser in the Dark World without reds, like that's only in the 0 and 1 star category. And then like you might think that strats from 70 would just naturally carry over to 120, but there are a few stars that are dynamically different. Like what Dry Roll 100, for instance, you do it with secrets in 70 but reds in 120, which makes the star completely different. And then TTM 100 you actually do with reds in 120, but you don't even do it in 70, you just do red standalone. So you do have to adapt to these different strats for 70. And of course there's Lava Boost in LLL, which doesn't really have a point in 120 since it skips a huge part of the stage that you're naturally going to want to get coins in. So
especially if you've been focusing super hard on one run and moving to another, that opens up the sort of muscle memory mistakes that you really don't want to see.
And Drogie having a really unfortunate mistake there, grabbing the box. That very rarely happens if you're just a little bit too close to it.
Both players getting bomb clip immediately.
And Drogie actually doing a nice little backflip after his bomb clip.
Stylish.
And not quite the true backflip bomb clip that saves half a second, but he'll take it. He gets him into the start pretty quick. And she's actually not getting the wall kick there. A weird angle kind of melting down a little bit, letting Drogie catch up almost. Just barely ahead now instead of having those few seconds to play with.
More or less a sync at this point. We'll see if Peach's slide changes that. So, how much has slide evolved over the years? Or has the strat been pretty consistent for a long time?
It's been pretty consistent, but you don't want to do what Drogie just did.
Oh yeah, bonking is...
Yeah, when you dive a little bit too high or you dive a little too late sometimes, and you bonk that wall, when you're in the diving animation from a low enough height, you won't take damage on the slide, but if you bonk beforehand, you could take damage. Or wait, I might be getting it backwards, sorry.
Either way,
basically,
you know what they say,
he did something slightly wrong, and
if you bonk your head, the run is dead. You know what they say.
Yep. The times have actually gotten a little bit faster, though, as people have just grinded the star more and more to take the corners even tighter. A 12-4, I believe, is technically possible with, or it might be a 12-3 that's like on the very verge of being possible with RTA strats. You can get a faster slide time, but you have to set up more at the start, so it makes the whole setup slower. Very, very nice Owlets from Drogie.
And she's decided very clean cannonless. So the difference between these two routes, is it super meaningful?
Not particularly. For Whomp's Fortress, it's pretty much what you want to get out of the way first. Some people have a little more difficulty with Cannonless than Owless, so they'll decide to just do that first. You will typically see one of those two stars, or both of them. Drogie actually taking a very unfortunate little mistake there, and sliding down the slope instead of being able to get a jump dive off of it. But What you'll normally see is people don't really tend to go for 100 coin first. It kind of is a show of confidence if people do, because you don't really... Some people don't like going for a star like that at the very start of the stage. So, like, if you're practicing, a good way to practice is doing stage RTAs, and doing a quick star like Cannonless or Owless first will get you into that stage RTA mindset. You're thinking, I'm in Wumps, the star is coming up, here's what I'll have to do for that star. Whereas if you try doing 100 coin first, you don't really have that mental prep time. So you will typically see 100 coin later on, but whether someone does Cannonless or Owless first really just depends on the runner. The only exception is if someone decides to do the Owl strat for that star in the cage, in which case they have to do that star later. So they will end up doing Cannonless first most of the time.
Speaking of Cannonless, I saw Drogie doing something really interesting. He went for the somewhat more difficult Cannonless where you don't actually cling to the wall and do the backflip first. Missed it, went for the backup, and then did the normal setup. How often do you see that sort of a kind of option select where you go for the harder thing, and if it doesn't work, get the backup star and then do the longer setup?
You see that decently often, especially in races, because in a normal PB attempt, you would probably just go for texture setup again. Drogie having a really rough time in Wumps right now with that upper platform area. It can be difficult to navigate, as we're seeing right now with a huge meltdown falling off the bridge.
Yeah, and small mistakes like that kind of add up because they affect your mentality as well as just the gameplay.
Oh, yeah. Like, you can just see from his body language, he's getting sick of it. He's not really liking what's going on in this little corner of the stage.
Like in fighting games, a big thing we talk about a lot is the concept of tilt, where...
Oh, yeah.
Like, tilt is very real in any sort of competitive gaming, whether it's fighting games, speedrunning, anything. Being able to untilt after a particularly frustrating mistake is a very useful skill to have.
Yes, and that is actually like somewhat what can separate a really good runner from like a still great runner, but just not quite as strong mentality. Being able to brush off mistakes is very, very important. I can't tell you how many races I've seen where someone makes a large mistake and you can definitely see a higher percentage of just little small errors in execution after that point.
It can really snowball.
Oh, yeah. And the worst part is when it actually creates a mental block for certain parts of the game where you're not able to perform as well because you're filled with this self-doubt. And it can be really, really challenging to actually get over a block like that. Drogie diving a little bit too early there.
Cheese at this point, I think, is 2 to 3 stars ahead.
It's a pretty significant lead coming out of Wumps, which isn't really what you're wanting to see at the start of one of these races.
Yeah, you want to get these early stars done super quick. The maps are small, the tricks are fast, so getting put at a deficit this early can definitely be frustrating. But there's still a lot of race to go. 70 star, not 10.
Yeah. And although Wumps can be very, very brutal, it does pale in comparison to some later parts of the game. I think it's different. I mean, its 100 coin is definitely hard, don't get me wrong, but I think part of its difficulties, yeah, like TikTok Clock 100 is on another level of hard. And I think the hate for this stage just comes from like how early it is in the run. The mistakes get magnified by the fact that the reset button is right there. If you don't want to lose that time, just start over. You haven't invested that much into it.
And like, when you've put so many runs into the early parts, it's especially frustrating to miss them. Because most of the time, when you're practicing a speedrun and you're resetting a lot, you play the first few stages way more than the later ones, so it's easier to brush off later mistakes. But when you've done Wumps 300, 400 times, it's especially frustrating.
Now, we have Cheese making a very interesting mistake, like just completely missing the wing cap switch there. Pretty uncommon of him to... I think he was probably going for the button rollout, which is a really difficult strat, but what was weird was he didn't look that close to the button. I think he was gonna try it and then just kind of aborted it at one point. I'm not really sure what was going through his head there.
Yeah, an unfortunate execution error, but being ahead gives you the liberty to make a few more mistakes than you might otherwise want to.
Now we got Cheese in Darkhold on steady pace for Shigeru's cycle. There are numerous cycles that you can make in Dark World, and these cycles refer to the set of moving platforms towards the end of the stage. They're on about a 4-second cycle, and Shigeru's cycle is the second full cycle that you'll be able to hit as a human. So he gets Shigeru's cycle here. If he were able to reach the rotating platforms one cycle earlier, that would be referred to as Tsukishima cycle, the fastest possible.
That's cat stuff, though.
But that is possible, RTA, but involves much more difficult movement. Like, you end up going lower on the rotating platforms towards the start of the stage with a very difficult to time jump dive. And you typically also have to do a quick turnaround on the switch. So you see right here, Drogie just does a, like, almost like starting a side flip. You can't actually, like, have Mario turn around as if he's turning on a dime. And it is a little faster, but much more precise to time.
Definitely in a race, you don't want to go for something that way.
Exactly. So it's very uncommon to see Tsukishima cycle really gone for. What you do see sometimes is a sort of in-between called Shia cycle, where you're actually hitting the red coin right in between Shigeru cycle and Tsukishima cycle. So instead of doing this rollout to get the coin, you actually have to jump and then kick over that gap. And it only saves about a second or so because the movement to the coin is slower, but you're able to get there early enough that it is worth going for if you want that little bit of time save without having to go for Tsukishima cycle. The advantage is you can hit Shia cycle just using a speed kick and the box rollout trick, which aren't anywhere near as difficult as doing the underside movement on those rotating platforms or that quick turnaround and switch.
Might be something interesting to keep in your back pocket if you know you've made a couple mistakes and need to get some time back. Might be worth going for if it's grand finals or something like that. Where you
right,
know...
and that's where the risk reward comes into play, because that strat for a very high level runner is ultimately kind of low risk. Speed kicks appear all over the game, and this one is actually a bit easier because you want to slow down a little bit on the speed kick to make sure that you're able to get the wall kick right after. And then box rollout, runner Parakushia has said before, you spend 30 minutes practicing that, you're good to start using it in runs. It's a little more inconsistent than the normal strat to grab the second red, but ultimately it's not beyond feasible to, like you said, have in your back pocket, and when you need it, just go for it. And
sometimes
pretty
you
reliably
need
it'll
strats
work.
like that. When you know, there's the stuff you do when you just want to be consistent and you want a normal time, and there's the stuff you do when you know that unless you bring out the really difficult strats, you're not going to beat your opponents. And it's important to have both of those sort of things in a competitive environment. And I think another skill in competition that's a little underrated is being able to recognize when you're in a position that you need to start busting out the slightly higher risk strats in order to make up a bit of lost time, just based on knowing which mistakes you've made already.
Exactly. It's easy to say, oh, just YOLO, just go for carpetless herder. But, like, you have, like, 3 categories of strats. Your common, everyday, consistent, I can do this all the time strats. Your, like, absolutely inconsistent strats that'll work occasionally, but you can't rely on. And then you have that in-between of stuff that will work most of the time, but you don't want to rely on. And you need to be able to pull from that well at some random points. And whoa, we've got She's coming in with a 959-person raid. Ooh. Welcome, Ducks and Boots Raiders. My name is Electric, and I'm co-comming with Minimat on this 70-star match between Drogie and Cheese. Drogie had a bit of a rough once earlier, but he's picked up some momentum, especially through Dark World. And
he's not too far behind.
This is definitely a very, very doable win from Drogie.
It's one big mistake away from being completely caught up.
Exactly, yeah. And that's one thing that's awesome about this game. Even when players have pretty significant leads, it's never completely safe.
You can bonk a wall kick on TTC, and then everything is out the window, and who knows who's going to win that.
Now, wait a minute. Hold on, people. Wait, Cheese was just streaming 120-star, but he's been racing for 13 minutes. No. What's up, Shantastic? Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see you all here.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
All right, so we got Cheese leaving this stage, and this is actually a pretty significant route difference that's going to pop up. Drogie is actually going to leave CCM with 1 additional stop. And the reason is in SSL, there's a trick known as pillarless, which is extremely difficult. It's probably the most precise singular trick in the run, and has a fair argument to be the overall most difficult alongside Lakitu Bounce and TTC1. Now, Cheese is going to have to go for pillarless twice, because he wants to go into HMC on that first trip to the basement, or sorry, he wants to delay going to HMC for later. And he needs to have 30 stars to open the fire seat door. The only way he can do that right now is by getting 2 of the pillarless stars in SSL. Drogie, however, only needs 1 because he's getting this extra star from doing the penguin race with 100 coin rather than slip sliding away with 100 coin.
Do you know exactly how much time it saves to go for the pillarless strats instead of grabbing the extra star here?
It depends on which form of pillarless they go for. If Cheese goes for Tama Plus, which is a little uncommon for him, he's much more comfortable with Standard Plus, then it can be, I think, like in the realm of like 6 to 7, but if you're only doing Standard Plus, it's more so in the realm of like 2 to 4, I believe. It is a time save for sure, but it's not super substantial unless you're going for double Tama Plus. Each Tama saves 2 seconds over a Standard Plus.
Crazy that Cheese is going for these exceptional strats while also streaming with his feet.
And also typing in the GSA chat, of course.
Yeah, typing with that elbow keyboard. What a multi-talented individual.
So we got Cheese. Gonna talk really quick with a rabbit that is late for an important date. And then he's going to be moving on into SSL for 2 executions of this very difficult trick. If he's able to get it, this will further solidify his lead over Drogie, but if he doesn't, Drogie only has to hit this trick once, so this could be an opening for Drogie, potentially.
This is a very interesting point of divergence for the future of this race.
And what I really like about this is the route resolves by the time you get out of the basement. You're not having to guess on who's ahead after this point. But like you said, it's interesting to see who decides to go for this slightly more risky, but ultimately with a payoff strat. So we got Cheese with the first plus going totally fine, and that was Tama, so he is going to be saving a little additional time. For those who haven't really seen the trick before, I don't know how many there are, but I'll try to explain it a little bit as Cheese does it the second time. Because it's a really cool trick, but it's a little convoluted.
There's definitely a lot of room for error, too. You can go all over the place if you don't aim it exactly precise.
Right, and like a lot of people put a lot of focus on the very first input because it is frame perfect, but like you said, the stick angle is also very important. So right there, Cheese grabs the bomb mid-explosion, which applies the bigger exploding bomb hitbox, but holds the bomb as close to Mario as a normal size bomb. So that clips the bomb's hitbox into Mario, which the game doesn't like and wants to force them apart, which ends up just applying a bunch of speed to Mario since the game can't move the bomb away from Mario he's grabbing. Well, the second part where they're doing that jump dive, they're actually doing what's called a glitchy regrab, which activates a hands-free state where the game doesn't think Mario's holding anything anymore. So that allows you to do moves like ground pounding without letting go of the bomb. And it also extends the timer of the bomb's fuse, so you have much longer to get to the pyramid. So it's really, really difficult, and a lot of stuff is involved, but if you Drogie unfortunately just whiffing right past the bomb with that punch.
You hate to see it happen.
Yeah.
Going for the backup, just grabbing the star.
Yeah, at least this star is really, really quick to get, even as a backup. The quote real guy jump is very easy. And just beautiful back-to-back pluses from Cheese.
Yeah, the mechanical execution to just do that like it's nothing instantly. And you can see from Drogie's side all the ways that this can kind of go wrong and slow down.
And like, that was still a good plus, but he already lost 2 seconds over one of Cheese's attempts because it wasn't Tama plus. He actually like dove back over the sandhill at the start, which makes it a lot easier to re-grab the bomb, but does waste a little time. And then, as you saw, like he had to take an extra ground pound before he clipped into the pyramid. That wasted a little bit more time.
And so this isn't a dig on Drogie either. It's hard. It's a really hard trick. And it just speaks to Cheese's mechanical execution and skill.
That's what I was about to say. Like, that's what you get from the thousands of hours. Like, those extra little seconds do matter a lot, but they take a lot of time and execution to get to.
Yeah, speedrunning is definitely an art where you spend, like you said, thousands of hours for seconds of improvement.
And I mean, we're like, some of the precision here, we're talking about a 30th of a second that you're trying to execute reliably. Like, you have, in order to do the strat the way both of these guys just did it, you have to grab the bomb on its largest exploding frame. Literally a 30th of a second from the bomb just being a puff of smoke that hurts Mario now. So
yeah, the term one frame input gets thrown around a lot, so it's easy to forget that in the best of circumstances, that's a 30th of a second. Depending on the frame rate of the game, it can be as ridiculous as 1/60th of a second. Frame perfect inputs are much more than just a phrase. They are deeply difficult.
Right. And there's a reason there are so many glitches that exist on that verge, because developers just don't really expect people to reliably hit stuff like that.
One of my favorite sequences in the run is this bully star. I love how it looks.
The triple bully kill is really precise, but it really, really satisfying when you hit it. And it's so precise in its timing that you see how Drogie didn't ledge grab that wooden platform before he killed that bully. Like, that's actually a tech called ledge grab skip. You have to take that long jump in a pretty precise way in order to have enough height to clear that ledge. You see most runners actually not do that tech when they go for the triple bully kill, because the 3 bullies are in a slightly different position if you do that tech that makes that trick harder. So they'll just opt to lose a little time to that ledge grab in exchange for having a much easier triple bully. And then that's something you see from runners like Cheese, Punkation, like that's not just a like mid-high tier level strat.
Looks like Drogie is going for the much easier route up the pyramid.
Yeah, Drogie going for elevator twirl real quick, and Cheese as well. But Cheese falling.
What a recovery!
That's a beautiful, beautiful. You can tell he's practiced that
pyramid volcano. Words are hard.
I mean, it's basically a pyramid. Like does a pyramid have to have 4 sides?
Listen, like, a pyramid is just a state of mind, all right?
A pyramid is just something your head can look like if you're a Silent Hill enemy.
Yeah. Like, it was my strategy to say the wrong word to make a comedic moment. A pyramid scheme, if you will.
I have achieved comedy. Wait, do you mean a reverse funnel system?
To turn the graph upside down. So Cheese is moving on to board Bowser's sub.
Drogie, unfortunately, doing a bit of a breakdance before the LLL painting. A volcano is just a pyramid that got made. Now that's a hot take. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Hot take.
Yeah, they were blazing straight through Lethal Lava Land, you know?
It looks like a pimple in the middle of Lethal Lava Land. Like, I can't help but see that. And I can't help but see Cheese having to take that other turnaround for the chest there.
But still, Cheese still has such a commanding lead at this point.
Yeah, but fast approaching now is a stage that could spell the end of that huge lead. Fire C hitting early Ellies is vitally important, and we actually saw earlier D whatever missing 2 cycles of the elevators that cost a considerable part of his lead. He was still able to take the victory, but Drogie is close enough that he could snipe Cheese if Cheese does end up making a significant mistake in that stage.
Yeah, there are a lot of points in Bowser 2 that are just so stressful.
Yeah. Like, honestly, that's one that you really can't dispute as much. Lava Boost early Ellies is definitely harder than Shigeru Cycle and Dark World. Like, I don't really know anyone that could reasonably disagree with that. The timing is just so tight for it, and, like, the very top of the top runners can get it pretty consistently, but aside from that, there are a ton of people that just have to settle for at least standard early Ellies a lot of the time.
You know what? It's respectable. That's the kind of trick where you start learning it once you really are running out of other ways to save time.
Well, it's something that you try to go for from the start, and you just accept you're probably not going to hit it for a while. Well, like me personally, like my movement is ultimately going for it, but the vast majority of the time I make enough mistakes that I have to at least settle for early LEs. So a few of the optimization you see here, that turnaround there on the platform is a little bit difficult to accomplish. And you want to get a lot of height on that pole. She's missing that red already cost him lava boost early LEs. He's probably lost early LE cycle entirely with that mistake too.
Yeah, this could be really, really big for Drogie.
That's at least 15 seconds gone right there on an elevator cycle.
If Drogie hits that, that'll be huge in making up this deficit.
And so Cheese is going to be trying. He's trying to make it, but I barely
got it.
Oh wow! Oh man, that was just on the edge
grab
right there. So his ending is going to be a little weird because of that, but it is what it is. He's going to take it. Okay, he's on the platform.
We have these. It's all good. Just make it a little exciting tension for us, the viewers.
Yeah. And so now we're going to be seeing Drogie go for the same strat, and let's see if he's able to execute now. I think he got the red. The cage was kind of in the way. But, okay, that was a 2 over the red, so he got the red there.
Looking good.
Yeah. He's on nice pace. If you do that double wall kick there, you have a little wiggle room, especially with this box movement that Drogie did. And yeah, he's totally fine. That's such a clean lava boost. When you get that deep to the platform, the deeper you get on the platform with the boost, the cleaner the cycle was. And that's about as good as you can hope for. I think I've seen like D whatever on an insane pace actually like get a better depth than that. But
yeah, that was super smooth. And at this point, Drogie is just a Bowser fight behind, where before it was 1 to 2 stars near the beginning of the route.
Right. He unfortunately lost a little time on his ending, but it pales in comparison to what Cheese lost due to missing. Well, it doesn't really pale in comparison. I keep forgetting that Cheese somehow made that cycle, because that was just wild.
Yeah, that was an insane recovery. That was so clutch.
So Cheese now heading upstairs into Wet Dry World. And upstairs is just such a satisfying part of the run. There's something dynamically different about the atmosphere of the run when you finally get to a stage like this. Like the whole game just starts to feel different. It's like a different run has started once you've gotten past Fire Seed and gotten here. And she misses that first wall kick. That is a very, very difficult wall kick. It actually involves a very subtle tech where you have to like slightly change Mario's angle between 2 jumps. So normally, like when you start your first jump in a sequence, your angle gets set and you're not going to be able to change your angle until you like run on the ground again. But if you purposely delay a double jump just a couple of frames, Mario's angle will change very slightly when he's running on the ground during that delay. And that's a tech that you have to use during that in order to make that wall kick work.
How often does that particular piece of tech come up? Is that a very frequent thing, or is it only for super precise jumps?
It's mainly for super precise jumps, and in some cases it will just make it easier. Lakitu bounds also can involve that, depending on your setup, but it's mainly just to make the trick easier. But it's ultimately a somewhat rare piece of tech. You mainly see it in like a trick like this. And in fact, I'm not even sure that you see it in Breezeless. I think Breezeless more so relies on like your momentum movement rather than Mario's angle specifically. Mario's angle, of course, is important, but I don't believe that you have to shift it in the middle of that trick. It's pretty rare, but like you have to be aware of it for when it does come up. It just goes to show the depth of this game. Like little things like that, you do have to be wary of and be able to execute. Absolutely. And that just goes down into like practicing it so much that it's just muscle memory and you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, the execution required to speedrun this game at the highest levels is absolutely essential. It's so much hard work. You have to put in so much time, but the reward is just one of the most beautiful speedruns there is.
Yeah, there's nothing better than like playing this game well. And like I don't even play it that great, and yet like my PB was such a satisfying run for me. And like, I can only imagine like as I grind more and get better, how satisfying that will be. Like it just, this game feels so good to play well. It's such a nice balance of like the game gives you these constant little short breaks with the actual star animation and the like star result screen. But like in between, there's just so much constant action, so much to focus on, and yet like a lot of the game is fairly fair. Like this star that you're seeing these guys do is one of the more RNG heavy stars in the run, just because of the coin spawns. There overall isn't a ton of RNG. A lot of the onus is just on you to execute. I mean,
which is one of the best things about the run.
And plus, it's not super glitchy. Like, you are abusing and exploiting the mechanics of the game in different ways, but, like, clips are fairly few and far between, and you're not really, like, doing anything weird with, like, the game state, or, like, obviously in this category, you're not BLJing everywhere.
Yeah, like, when you get down to 16 and 0 star, that's when things kind of go off the rails, but in 70 star, it's just a beautiful exhibition of player skill, routing, and overall practice.
And Jesus asking, commentators, who do you main in Melee? I'm an awful person, so I main Kirby, and I'm just gonna leave it at
that. I'm actually a Guilty Gear player, so I guess my answer is Ulfeld. I think my sponsor would get pretty mad at me if I stopped playing fighting games that they want me to play and started playing a lot of Melee.
For some reason, I never got into Melee. I know I need to, and like Melee is so huge in the speedrun community. Like when I go to events, I do sometimes feel a little awkward when people are like, hey, let's all play Melee, and I'm just like, but I suck. Pumpkin literally made fun of me for how bad I am at Melee once. Like whenever we were at Pace, I was playing with him, Torj, and Siglemic, and Pumpkin was just constantly giving me crap for how bad I was.
Dang, you hate to see it.
It was honestly a fun memory, but still just like...
Like getting roasted while playing fighting games is fun and frustrating at the same time.
Right. Like, I know I'm bad, so it was fun.
It's part of the experience.
Right.
Speaking of the experience, the one-star lead that Cheese has had has remained pretty static for a really long time, but as you mentioned a while ago, that is not insurmountable.
Right, and this star isn't super long, like the one that Drogie's on, but it can cause a little bit of issues. He's not going to be going for that mountain clip there. It only saves a third of a second if you do it optimally, so if you're not able to execute consistently, that's one that like it's low risk and somewhat high reward because you can lose a lot more time than you can save.
Yeah, it's a scary strat to go for, particularly in a race. Like in PB attempts, it's a little different, but I don't know. What do you think in general about the race meta versus the PB meta?
As the seasons have progressed, it has actually started to merge a little bit closer and closer together. Like the race world record is actually, I believe, like a 3rd or 4th place time on the leaderboard. But as an overall thing, certain tricks that are low reward and very high risk don't get seen too often, like Island Hop, for instance. But as an overall trend, I think racers isolate the strats that are hard, but that they're also the absolute most comfortable with, and focus more on those. Each racer kind of has notable strats that they're like really supreme at. Like D whatever, for instance, you know his TTM res is just going to be exceptional. I think he holds the single star record for it still. So, Drogie unfortunately missing mountain clip. It's a little bit weird to try to back that up, but at least he didn't land back in the water. That would have wasted a lot more time. Pumpcation is just known for like general consistency, where like a lot of his strats aren't quite the most optimal, but he's able to
never drop
them
it's
perfectly.
Yeah, like if there are no drops and your strats are just a little bit slower, every drop your opponent makes is just one mistake closer to giving you the free win.
Right. Drogie again with an issue with mountain clip there. I wonder if he might just be like mistiming a jump dive there, because you can do a standard dive to get through there, but it's a little slower because I don't believe you can get like the fast clip up to the upper body of water there if you do the standard dive. But if you do a jump dive, you have to hit A and B simultaneously. Otherwise, Mario jumps away from the scene, then dives, which doesn't cause him to flip. Yeah, and like that's one thing from TGC. Like, runners tend to drop like the absolute most difficult strats, but they will overall still play decently risky.
Right. I think that sort of I think that decision making is what makes races in particular so interesting to me. What do they go for? What do they decide is just not worth it? Like you mentioned before, which strats that might be super hard are their personal strats they've practiced so many times that they don't actually feel like the risk is there anymore. All of that adds together to make races a super interesting way to experience the speedrun.
Yeah, and of course the race meta evolves throughout the seasons. I said in an earlier race today, like in season 1, that CCM17 route that Cheese did earlier was actually pretty rare to see. Like in most of Cheese's races, I think he went for CCM18 in that first season. But as the seasons have progressed, those runners have, like the top runners, have become way more consistent at it. And like back towards the end of season 2, most of Division 1 was doing that CCM17 out in races. Only a couple runners really weren't. And I think you're going to see the meta, like I said, kind of merge more with the Drogie missing that first red. That's going to be a huge time to back up. And it just feels so weird to back up. All your momentum is gone, and your
muscle memory gets broken, because like it's a really big thing. If you're doing the same sequence 100 times and you're not thinking about it, that's one thing. But the moment you're thinking about doing it, you actually go back to the first couple of times you did it, where you're thinking about where your hands are, thinking about what your fingers are doing, and you start making the same mistakes you used to make. That's like a really big thing in learning to combo in fighting games, for example. And I'm sure it translates in a similar way to any sort of mechanical.
Oh, definitely. Like, when you start second-guessing yourself on certain tech, and with how precise a lot of the tech is, it's very, very easy to just, like, suddenly have everything go wrong. Suddenly, like, you mistime an input in such a weird way that you haven't seen in a long time. This star that Drogie just executed is a very difficult one. I'm glad to see him do it like that. So
the mountain was not kind to Drogie. The lead widened by 2 or 3 stars.
Yeah, that mountain clip was giving him a ton of trouble.
Yes, the Ice Pyramid, my favorite sequel to the Lava Pyramid from earlier. I can't wait till they get to the Clock Pyramid as well.
What about the Sky Pyramid? It's the best one.
Are you talking about the Sky Pyramid they land on for the wing cap, or the Sky Pyramid that they try to do carpetless on and then lose the race?
Both.
Oh, Sky Pyramid and Sky Pyramid 2, you say?
Yeah. The Sky
this is
Pyramid
really a game
squared,
of pyramids.
Hyper Sky Pyramid.
Like, I'm actually a plant from the pyramid lobby is the thing.
Oh, you're from the Illuminate? Wow. I didn't expect you here.
That's how we get you. First we're talking about pyramids, and then Illuminati every time.
Our tricky triangles.
You know they are! Like, I don't even know why you felt the need to ask that question.
It should be called tricky...
Perilous pyramids. Like, easy.
There you go.
They really should have hired me 20 plus years ago when they were making this game.
Yeah, just for all the translations.
Yeah, they made
it is a tad sad that like speedruns never get to see like signs and other like beautifully made text in this game. Yeah. A lot of the signs have this nice like conversational tone that like it's really friendly and engaging for new players. It's kind of interesting to see how much detail went into like what's kind of a small aspect for later players.
This game oozes charm.
It really does. There's
a
so
reason
much...
that people are excited about it so many years later, right?
Oh no. Boy. Okay, Drogie, really, really nice backup there. He was able to still grab Mips really close to the HMC entrance, so he didn't lose a ton of time. So this routing that they do, where they actually make a return to the basement, Mips is all that they're coming back here for, since you can get a second star from him after you get 50 stars. But that reroute only saves about a second over doing HMC while you're already in the basement and just doing another star in place of that Mips star.
But it's not really like that difficult of a reroute, right? So might as well.
Exactly. And by doing Mips, you're skipping out on another star that involves like a decent amount of effort. Like I believe the one that pretty much replaced was like SL Reds, which if you practice it enough, it can go pretty well. Like it's not super hard, but there's a lot of places you can lose little bits of time.
Right, like it's finicky and it's dumb, and you could just pick up a rabbit instead, so.
Exactly, yeah. May as well just pick up a rabbit. Especially because normally all you have to do is long jump one way, long jump a slightly different way, dive, roll out, dive. Bam.
This is pre-recorded. Commentary is also pre-recorded as well. I just made a really
the race
sick
is live.
guess.
The commentary is just pre-recorded. The racers were given instructions on what moves to execute, what mistakes to make, etc.
This is a hard read that you were going to ask that question, and when I come back to watch this archive, if you actually did, I'm going to feel real nice. It seems like both players moving and grooving. It was really the mountain that widened the gap a little bit.
Right, and TTM is honestly, it should be a tippy stage. Like, it belongs like on the staircase between upstairs and tippy. It's not quite tippy level hard, but it's close. And you have to do so much in it, so it's not super surprising to see a runner lose a decent amount of time there. Also, hello, little Mario.
Jesus, moving on to the third floor. This is where things get both very stressful and very interesting.
Yeah, so just about every runner is going to start Rainbow Ride the same way with a quick triple jump, and she's doing the glitchy wall kick setup here, or at least oh, that's a death.
Oh no.
Okay, so that wasn't actually a glitchy wall kick, I don't believe. It's just he used that left-hand platform, which is much harder to wall kick off of. I think there is a way to wall kick off of it where you get what's called a glitchy wall kick. It's a little technical to explain, but basically what happens is the game kicks you off of a wall while giving you an angle as if you kick off a different one, which results in some weird stuff happening. But you could use that here for like the fastest strat. But she's opts for that left side movement because it allows you to just do that triple jump straight onto the wooden platform. It makes the lineup more difficult, but like the jump itself is easier.
Easy is a very relative term when we're talking about Rainbow,
yeah,
right?
That's why I say like
though, yeah.
easier.
Easier. Every time any runner wall kicks off these spinning platforms, it always looks like they're not going to get it to.
Right, and like a lot of like if you talk to runners like Heisenberger, like when you're on your way to this level of insane consistency, sometimes you'll triple jump a little short and you'll hit the wall, but you'll hit it low enough that for some reason, as you wall kick, the game is like, wait, Mario's touching the wall again. And so like you'll wall kick and then instantly bonk and die. And that's the worst mistake, because you're just like, if I would have just hit A twice, I probably would have lived.
If I would have just believed. So, in theory, let's say you get the wall kick correct. If you pressed A again, would that mess anything up, or could you just kind of always option select the second wall kick?
It would mess things up because you have to hold A after the first wall kick to give Mario the full height. Any jump that Mario does in this game, aside from a triple jump and a side flip, holding A for longer extends the height of the jump.
I didn't know if that height was like strictly necessary for that particular wall kick.
I think like you can take it a little lower, but you can't release A like every time.
Oh, you can't option select it. You can't just
right, yeah.
If only though, right?
Of course, yeah. It'd be really nice if you could actually react to that stupid bonk.
So, as we were talking about wall kicks, she's made a couple pretty critical execution errors, and the gap is shortened quite a bit.
Yeah, but he's moving right along at this point and doing pretty well. He's exiting Rainbow right now as Drogie only has 1 star left. So So he does still have that solid 1-star lead, but TTC is a stage where that can definitely fall apart.
Right, we're back. We weren't really in one mistake could swing the race territory for a while, but I feel like we're kind of back there.
And like with this stage, and specifically with this next star that she's going to end up going for, or somewhere later down the line, that's where the one mistake territory really opens. So this is a little interesting. More runners have been doing this recently, but most of the time you'll see a runner start with TTC 100 when they get here. But a number have started doing reds instead, and I believe this is a similar thing to Womps earlier, where you think of stage RTAs, where you just want to get acclimated to the stage, get in the mindset of, I'm in TTC, I'm going to have to do 100 soon. And so by starting out with a pretty easy star that you can't really die on, like any of those little jittery mistakes you make are just, they don't have as much consequence. And
right,
ultimately
you're
when you
ready to
re-enter
play
the stage,
TTC.
Right.
Your
I
brain...
think that's really where that comes from. Now, one thing about TTC, though, is you do want your first star when you first enter the stage to be a time-stopped star. Because going to TTC the way that Cheese did it, it's like the clock is already pretty close to being time-stopped, so you're not having to wait that extra second and a half as compared to like a stage re-entry. Normally when you re-enter the stage, you have to just wait around for a second and a half for the clock to advance to the stopped time.
But just by changing the routing of which star they start with, they can do a little bit more optimization.
Exactly, yeah.
Sure
You get to skip that waiting period once, so that's pretty nice. But the consequence of that, though, is if you end up making some sort of a mistake on that castle movement, you could end up actually having to wait an entire clock cycle, which takes 3 seconds.
But it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, where it's a pretty easy thing to go for, so the risk reward is really there. Like, worst case scenario, you miss one cycle, which
and
you would have to do anyway if you didn't go for it. Is the thing.
Right, and it's just castle movement is all. Like you just grind it out a little bit, and you're not having to do some kind of precise wall kick. Like, it's just getting familiar with the movement is all. She's finishing up a pretty nice 100 coin. Now, Drogie having kind of an interesting issue. Like, I'm not really sure why he went back to the starting platform with his 10 coins, but
sometimes a missed input leads to some interesting strats.
Yeah, and I didn't see what happened at the very, very start, so maybe something weird happened with his coin count. You know what may have happened is he may have like lost a coin and had to run back up to get one. I think there's a bomb up top. Yeah, there's 2. It can be a little hard sometimes to like mentally picture where things are in a stage when you're trying to think of what a racer has done. Like there, I wasn't sure if the bombs were on the upper part of that ledge or the lower part where like the coin box and the rotating platforms are.
There's definitely a lot going on. And when you're trying to remember things that aren't on screen, that's when it gets real tricky.
Yeah. And like, that's something that you're not seeing a lot from these runners, thankfully, but when you make big mistakes like missing numerous coins that aren't really accounted for in the route, that's where like your game knowledge really has to shine through, where you're like, okay, where is the closest thing I can get to make this good again?
Especially if you don't, and it's what you just implied, but to put a fine point on it, when you don't have a specific backup, you really need to know a lot about the game itself.
Right. And TDC can be especially challenging for that because, like, some of the 10 coin boxes, if you just get really unlucky and take a big fall, like, there aren't really 10 coins up high just spare for you to grab. There's a 3 coin box, and that's kind of the only extra thing for, like, the upper third or so of the clock.
Yeah, so
I think, like, the closest thing is all the way down on the time jumps on moving bars platform, which is really far down compared to where you are at the top of the clock. So now, Cheese has his 70th star, grabbing the Toad star last.
Drogie at 68. Cheese's TTC was just perfectly clean. Like,
it was really
the only
nice,
mistakes were
especially
really
TTC
small
button.
stuff. Really small stuff.
Oh, yeah. And an interesting little thing to note, too, is this, both runners are going to be doing this Toad, or sorry, Cheese did the Toad last, but Drogie did the Toad early routing. And they're actually very, very close in timing. Drogie taking the death, though, which is definitely not close in timing to not dying.
Yeah, that's not what you want to see when you're a little bit behind.
But I believe the consensus nowadays is Toad early is technically faster, but very likely you're not saving time on it.
Big drop by
it's
Cheese.
hard to execute faster. Yeah, that is honestly a more common drop than you would think. That tech is very hard that he's going for right now. Moving right side is just very, very brutal. I think he's only going for it because of his lead, but like with the point system that we have in place, where like you want to win by as much as possible, we see him now just going to be going for moving left side, and I think that's the smart play at this point.
Yeah.
So just go ahead and get on up there. The advantage of that right side is you don't have to ledge grab like you often have to do with the left side movement. And
But
like,
at some point, it's sunk cost if you keep going for it.
Right, and you only save like less than a second, I believe. Like it's maybe a second at most, because you're just not having to traverse that left side of the path.
Jeez, Bowser 3.
Here we go. Interestingly hard part of this game. It shouldn't be as hard as it is, but it still is.
The hitboxes on the bombs are a suggestion more than a rule.
They're a suggestion in the wrong way. Like they're bigger than they should be. They have like sonar on them or something. Like they'll detect that Bowser's pretty close and just blow up. But the real difficulty is just that like how fast Mario is spinning him. You only have a few frames of a window to actually throw him at a bomb. And when you have the nerves going and like you're just spinning him around and like the timing is as imprecise as it is, like it's kind of like one of those old arcade games, the Tower of Power, where like you're just having to hit a button when a light is cycling through these options.
It's 3 frame perfect inputs that you can't really set up past just having a general feeling that you get by playing the game for thousands of hours.
And they're not even quite frame perfect. They're precise enough and the visual cue is loose enough that it's very hard. Like I believe someone's told me before that depending on where you're throwing him from, it can be anywhere from like 3 to 5 frames. I'm not certain on that one though. It is a very narrow window though.
She's with a very entertaining 49-49.
Very nice. The duplicate time here.
Drogie missing the Bowser throw. Oh, you can see in the camera they were not super happy about that. Bowser throw on the 2 connects. With this toss, it looks like Drogie's gonna end with a 51.
Yeah, nice lower 51, like a 51, 19, 20 or so. So that's not bad at all.
And nothing to sneeze at. An excellent performance by both runners.
And being less than 2 minutes behind, like he's still getting a pretty hearty point total. I think he's still getting at least 20 points, which isn't a bad haul for a race like this. I mean, when you're going against a opponent as dominant as Cheese with such a storied history of the game, like ultimately a lot of runners are pretty much just playing as best they can, hoping to just pick up as many points as they can. So, but that'll do it for this race. But don't go anywhere, folks. We do have another race right on the way. This time around, it's going to be Heisenberger versus Blue Bob. 2 pretty close players in their skill levels, and both of them kind of spending a lot of time with 120 recently. So it should be interesting to see what they're going to do in 70. But for now, I'm Electric, joined by Mini Matt. I'll be seeing you on the next race, though, right?
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
And I'm hoping to see all of you watching at home as well. So peace out for a sec. We'll be right back.
In a minute.